Attention, attention. There is a Patreon giveaway thanks to a current patron. They agreed to give up one of their very nice knives in a raffle for new patrons. So if you've been convicted, you've listened for a while, you think you want to become a patron of Gunfighter Life or the Alpha Male podcast, perhaps this will be that push you've been looking for. It is a K-Bar Folding Hunter. Now, K-Bar is a good knife company, and I don't think I have to explain that if you're into this kind of stuff. K-Bar is a legendary knife company. This is a very good knife that looks very suitable for EDC. Now, I don't know how big you think this group is, but I have less than a dozen patrons at the time of this recording, and that's total. So who knows how many will join this month. So I'd say if you want to join, your chances are probably pretty good. I made a post on Patreon. You can go to the Patreon page without being a patron. Some stuff is just for patrons. In fact, most stuff is just for patrons. But there's a few videos on there you can watch that are just for the public, for everybody. And I did a post for the public, for everybody. So if you want to go see the details or see a picture of this knife, go over to Patreon. It is the main source of income for this podcast. What is going on, gunfighters? So this episode is going to be a throwback like it was in days of yore when I would record this podcast driving to or from the gun range or to or from my job as a private contractor or the commander of a tactical team. When I did this out of my own pocket just to give you guys the information. And I would just talk into the iPhone and upload it. Well, I may do some audio improvements when I get back to a computer. In the sense I'm recording it on the iPhone and it's a mobile recording. Kind of a throwback for those of you that have listened that long. If you have, I really appreciate you and thank you. And I thank everybody that steps up and supports the podcast. Anyway, a fun episode today on just fun guns. If you're like me, you appreciate guns for more than just the tactical aspect, the martial application. You appreciate even for more than just hunting. They're just fun. I remember going out with my friends or alone in the woods when I was a kid and just having fun with a gun. Just me and my friends shooting at tin cans or going hunting in the swamps and in the woods and just walking around and trying to shoot mistletoe out of trees and things like that, just having a good time. I wonder if there's hopefully pockets in this country where kids are still allowed to just grab a gun and go out in the woods and have fun and be safe and have fun with guns. Guns can be a lot of fun, so let's not forget that. Gun ownership is a serious matter. Concealed carry is a serious matter. If you listen for any length of time, you'll know that I carried a firearm professionally for most of my adult life, whether military or law enforcement or a private contractor or whatever. But let's not forget that guns can just be fun. In fact, I would like to make it a point when we get back from our road trip to literally just go out and have a fun day of just plinking and just shooting for fun. I was thinking about this episode and I thought, what are some of the most fun guns? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully you enjoy it. I think, hands down, I think the weapon that has to be the top choice for this, the most fun gun just of all time, period. A lot of times I won't pick one, and a lot of people would make you wait till the end, but I think unarguably the number one most fun gun of all time is the Ruger 10/22. I don't even think it has any close seconds. The Ruger 10/22 is just so much fun. I remember, when I was a kid saving up enough money and having my mom go to Walmart and buying me a 10/22. That may have been the first weapon that I ever bought, and I still have it, and it still rides in the back of my daily driving vehicle because it's an awesome gun. It's a fun gun. I cannot recount the number of days and hours I've spent a field with that gun, shooting living things, shooting cans, just going out to the range, teaching young shooters. I would like to think that there are several young shooters out there that was the first gun that they ever shot. It is a super fun gun to shoot. The Ruger 10/22, they're not cost prohibitive. They've gone up a lot in price now since when I bought mine. I still remember for $189 at Walmart. It's hard to believe I can still remember that. I remember it almost like it was yesterday. I was so excited to get that gun. And I can't recall the amount of rounds I've put through that gun, or it may be on its third stock. And who knows how many sets of sights and scopes put on and taken off and everything like that. But that gun is still going strong. And it is just as fun today as it was when I bought it. And for so many young shooters throughout the country, the 10/22 is maybe the first gun they ever had or ever shot. It is unrivaled in the amount of fun you can have for the money. Now, obviously the 22 is going to be the most bang for your buck, I think, as far as fun and money expenditure goes. But I didn't want this to be just a list of 22s, so there'll be others. But for my list, and I did have Patreon picks, but for my list to meet the criteria for a gun to have to be fun to shoot, it had to be economical to shoot, meaning both the gun itself and the ammo it fires couldn't be cost prohibitive. So, for example, there is not going to be, a Ruger guide gun and 375 Ruger on this list. That's a great gun, but it's probably not fun to shoot as far as recoil goes. It's certainly not a cheap gun, and the ammo is certainly not fun to go shoot if it costs you $5 every time you pull the trigger. So, again, for my criteria, it has to be fun and enjoyable to shoot, number one. A double barrel 10 gauge is not on here. It has to be economical to shoot, meaning the ammo, the printer ink, right, has to be affordable. And the gun itself can't be cost prohibitive or so nice or so fancy, you're not going to have a good time going out and either walking through the woods with it or shooting it at the range. So that's kind of my criteria. But unrivaled, the 10/22. It's great for just going out and having a fun day of shooting. Thankfully, although it's a little bit more expensive, I guess double what it was a couple of years ago, 22 ammo is readily available, and it's still the cheapest option for shooting and having fun for an actual firearm. So the 10/22, I think, is unrivaled and unquestionably the most fun gun of all time, period. The second one is similar but very different. It's the same but different from that one, and that is the single shot 22s. I have a Savage, I believe it's the Rascal. It's a bolt action but a single shot. It doesn't even have a magazine. You literally drop one round in and then work the bolt, and it's a single shot. And I have taught a lot of new shooters on that gun as well. It is a super fun and awesome gun to teach new shooters. It is phenomenal and just fun and safe. You may not want to, or the shooter may not be mature enough to handle a semi-automatic. Starting them off with a single shot that you can easily look down and see whether it's loaded or unloaded, all that kind of stuff, that's a great thing. And sometimes it's more fun with a single shot. I don't have any scientific basis for this, but in my years of training shooters, I think that if you had an equal rifle, meaning that the accuracy on that rifle was equal, and you had the exact same iron sights, meaning sight distance, sight radius, trigger, mechanically the guns were identical in shootability, and you put 10, let's say, very common plinking thing, you put up 10 sporting clay targets on a bank at 100 yards, and you gave the same shooter a single shot and a semi-auto, they probably hit more with the single shot because they have to take time in between shots. And that generally causes circumspection and personal reflection on what they did wrong. So there's a time and a place to go back to single shot. If you've listened for any length of time, you'll know that I practice a lot on what I call my accuracy standard. A lot of times I will do that with a single shot break action 22 for that very reason. It gives me time to slow down, take a breath, evaluate what I did right or what I did wrong. Right? Because just dumping rounds down range, although some people may think that it does not make you a better shooter. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And it can be a lot of fun to get better and improve marksmanship. And it can be a lot of fun to just shoot a single shot rifle or pistol. So that little Savage Rascal is on there. Keystone Arms also makes one that's very good. And there's countless others. They're not in business anymore, I don't believe, but a very classic one of this is the H&R Handy Rifle. Just like the old break-open single-shot shotguns, they made a break-open single-shot 22. And that is just a phenomenally fun and safe gun to get new shooters into shooting. And if you want to make it even more economical, you can blow through a brick of 22 ammo in a Ruger 1022 fairly quickly. But it's going to take a long time to burn through a brick of 22 ammo with a single shot rifle or pistol. So next on the list is going to be, for me, my Savage Rascal. A lot of times I'll just shoot that Savage Rascal even though I have other, I have a Scar 17, but I'll just go out and shoot the Savage Rascal. One, because it helps with my marksmanship, and two, it's just a lot of fun to shoot. So Savage Rascal for me, but any single shot 22, whether it's the classic one from, decades ago, which would be the H&R single shot handy rifle, whether that is a Thompson Center Contender rifle or pistol configuration, those are great guns. Also on that list that I shoot quite often, which is, I guess, more analogous to training that I do with a handgun most often, is a semi-automatic 22 handgun. And for me, and I'm not a shill for Ruger, right? I don't get any sponsors, I don't get any kickback. Ruger has definitely made some lemons over the years, but Ruger really dominates, in my opinion, the 22 market as far as the Ruger 1022 and the Ruger Mark series. Whether it's a Mark 1, 2, 3, or 4, they're all great guns as far as 22 handguns go. They are really reliable. They are a lot of fun to shoot. Because of the way they're designed with the fixed barrel and the fixed sights on the barrel, they are crazy accurate. They're just fantastic guns. Again, I could only venture to guess the amount of rounds I have put through the Ruger Mark series of guns, 1, 2, 3, or 4. They are just fantastic and great guns. So next on the list is not as affordable as they used to be, as with a lot of military surplus, but it's still quite affordable. In fact, I just saw an ad for a Norinco private party sale for $500. Now, people that bought these when they were $99 are gasping at that. But for a military-grade rifle, $500 is not bad. And that rifle is the SKS. As far as center-fire rifles go, I don't think that anything is more fun and just good for a day at the range as the SKS. It's a great rifle. They are reliable, they are robust, they shoot the very common and plentiful and still fairly inexpensive as far as centerfire rifles go, 7.62 by 39, the same round that an AK shoots. And I didn't put an AK on this list because there are some dirt cheap AKs, but in general, I don't know, there's probably individual SKSs that aren't very reliable, but as a whole, whether it's a Chinese Norinco SKS or a Russian SKS or a couple of other ones, a Yugo SKSs, in my experience, they've all been really good guns. And they're more traditional to shoot, so they shoot more like a traditional rifle, and they are just really fun to shoot. And they shoot, again, that 7.62 by 39. When I was growing up, they were kind of the poor man's deer rifle, because you could get them for, I remember, all day long for like $129, just racks of them. And I think there was a time where they were even cheaper than that. You could get the gun, you could get the ammo, and it was an effective deer hunting round. It still is. And unlike the AK-47, the SKS is a fine deer rifle, and I think it's got better sights for fine marksmanship. And it might even be a more accurate rifle than the SKS. And for that reason, I think it's a fantastic, just fun, plinking gun. And it's a fun, plinking gun that you can go out and practice with and not spend an arm and a leg, and it's still a good defensive gun. This was a gun made for war, right? It was a gun designed for the Russian military. And if you know about Russian military guns, you know they're rugged and reliable, and this SKS is no different. And it's very shootable. They generally have very good sights, and again, they shoot ammo that's economical. This gun made the list when the Mosin Nagant did not. Yeah, the Mosin Nagant, the rifles themselves are inexpensive, and the ammo is inexpensive, but the whole point of this was being fun to shoot. And for a lot of shooters, the Mosin Nagant is not fun to shoot. It just has more recoil than what is generally considered fun, right? Go out and shoot 100 rounds of 7.62 by 54R in a day, and I don't know how much fun that's going to be on shot number 99. But the SKS, you could certainly, afford to. Most people could afford to, on even a minimum wage job, if they have any disposable income, shoot 100 rounds of SKS, and their shoulder would not be black and blue at the end of the day. So I think the SKS must be on the list for just really fun guns to shoot, just to go out and have a fun range day. And unlike the 22s, sure, you can shoot a Ruger 10/22 out at 200 yards. I've certainly done it for fun, but you can realistically expect to hit targets, if you have a fair degree of marksmanship at 200 yards with an SKS. Even 300 yards is totally doable, and that can be a lot of fun. And you can really, have fun shooting with iron sights with an SKS affordably. The other one barely makes the list, but it's so much fun, I had to put it on here. They're not super affordable anymore, but a lot of people bought them when they were, and there's still so many around that it makes the list, and that is the M1 carbine. M1 carbines are just super fun. They're just so much fun to shoot. They are, I don't know for sure if this was intentional, but they basically look to me like the original version of what the 10/22 came to be. They're very much a light, handy carbine with good iron sights. They're fun to shoot. They are in a mild recoiling round. The 30 carbine is just a fantastic gun. And again, they're kind of pricey now. There's even companies coming out with them new, and the new ones aren't prohibitively expensive. I think at least one or maybe more companies are coming back out and actually making them. I think they even make a model now in 9mm, which is really fun and awesome. But it's just the classic going out to the range and plinking gun, the 30 carbine. And it's not an ineffective round. It's quite effective at reasonable ranges. It's even an effective medium game round. I do believe that 30 carbine has more energy at 100 yards than a 357 Magnum does at the muzzle. It is a very fun plinking round. And although it's not a pistol caliber carbine, it very much fills that niche, which is going to lead me to the next couple of guns we're going to talk about. Any red-blooded American probably has fun shooting a lever-action rifle. So I think a good mix of fun and shootability and still classic Americana is going to be that 38 Special 357 lever action. And take your pick. I would prefer a Marlin, but I know that Winchester makes them, and they make very fine ones. Henry makes them. Whether they're any good or not, I can't say. But a lot of companies make lever action 357, and by that 38 special rounds, lever action carbines, right? And they are a lot of fun to shoot. A carbine firing 38 special is going to have very mild recoil. It's going to be a ton of fun to shoot. It's going to be much cheaper to shoot than most center fire rifle rounds like a 308 or a 30-06. It's still pretty potent, and just going out and running a lever gun is awesome, and running it in a pistol caliber just makes it that much more fun. So any of the lever action 357 38 special combos are going to be a lot of fun to shoot. You also get some let's say continuity there. You can shoot that gun and it's a lot of fun, which means you're probably going to do it more, and that can be used, especially if you've been partially neutered in some states, sadly, where you can't have a semi-automatic rifle for defense. It's not a horrible option for defense, a lever action 357. It's not a horrible option for medium game hunting with the right bullet choice and ammo selection on medium-sized game at reasonable ranges. So that's got to be on the list. And the modern version of that, the many iterations of pistol caliber carbine, right? So your Ruger, whatever basically it's a hopped up 1022 that shoots 9mm. That'd be a super fun gun. It takes Glock mags, you're shooting 9mm, which for a centerfire round is about as cheap as you're gonna get, even cheaper than 38 special. 9mm, just because of economy of scale, is super fun to shoot. It's got very little recoil. I believe it is the Ruger PC9. But a super fun gun, but any of the pistol caliber carbines in that guise. There are a few that take Glock mags. Super fun pistol caliber carbines. There are a bunch of the Franken ARs converted in a bunch of different ways to fire 9mm. Any of those, assuming they run and actually function, are going to be quite fun to shoot. So the pistol caliber carbines just get the nod. I'm talking about the more modern iteration of semi-automatic pistol caliber carbines. Those just have to be on the list, and there's so many. The Ruger is probably the one that I would go with because it probably works and runs fine. But you certainly can build one yourself based on the AR platform, and they'd be a lot of fun. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the 410. And I really don't care what kind of 410 it is. The very first gun I ever shot, I think, and hunted with, maybe not that I ever shot, but that I ever hunted with, and that was given to me as my gun, was a 410 bolt-action rifle. And the 410s are just a lot of fun to shoot, right? Just because they have that mild recoil. I didn't put any other shotguns on the list because although for a grown man, if you know proper stance and form, shooting 100 rounds of birdshot or trap load or a skeet load is not painful. For a very young shooter or an inexperienced shooter, it can be that if they don't have the gun tight into their shoulder or something like that. I think a 12 gauge is a lot for maybe a new shooter or a young or smaller statured shooter. So I didn't put a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge on the list, although a 20 gauge has less recoil, like a 20 gauge shell versus a 12 gauge shell has less recoil. A lot of times those guns are quite a bit lighter, so the recoil is actually about the same between, let's say, a pump action 20 gauge and a pump action 12 gauge, just because the gun itself is lighter, so the shooter is getting more of that recoil, even if there's less total recoil, if that makes sense. So they didn't make the list for me. But a 410 pump action, just a ton of fun. A 410 bolt action, super fun. A 410 lever action, you just double the fun because you get a super fun lever action and you get a super fun caliber of the 410 shotgun. So just a lot of fun there. Even a break open single shot 410 shotgun is a lot of fun. The downside to that is, as far as shotguns go, it is the most expensive gauge, even though it's the smallest gauge, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. I don't think it's prohibitively expensive, but they're a lot of fun. So a 410 of any kind, it has to make the list. And if you're talking about bang for your buck, just affordability, just a break open single shot 410 shotgun can be a lot of fun. Okay, one that I have to talk about is, we talked about lever guns. I think there's just something about being American and liking that kind of cowboy heritage, even if your family never went west of the Mississippi. Just that kind of cowboy Americana. We talked about the lever action, but what about the revolver? Quintessential American kind of gun, even especially the single action revolver. We all know about but the Colt Peacemaker is not affordable to even own the gun or to shoot the ammo. 45 long Colt is not cheap. If you reload, you can make the argument you can make it fairly cheap if you cast your own bullets, but it's outside of the scope of this discussion. But what you can get your hands on for not a lot of money and not a lot of cost to ammo is the single action 22 long rifle handguns. The most common one of this is the Heritage Rough Riders. Heritage Rough Riders are a ton of fun. I have taught plenty of shooters on the Heritage Rough Rider. They are a fantastic gun. I don't know what they are with inflation, but last I looked, they were less than $200. And you get a lot of gun for $200. They are a lot of fun. If you want to learn just the basics of handgun shooting, it's a good place to start. And it gives you kind of that cowboy heritage. They're a lot of fun. And they are slower to load, which again can make that brick of 22 ammo go farther. So the Heritage, and if you want something a little bit better quality, heirloom to pass down to your children, then the Ruger Single 6, you may be able to find an older Ruger Bearcat or something like that, but they're just fantastic guns. The single action revolvers and 22 long rifle, just so much fun. And just they harken back to that golden age of Americana, or at least what we think of as the golden age of Americana. So they have to make the list for that reason. Now let's get into the new golden Americana rifle, and that is the AR. There is no argument that the AR is a ton of fun to shoot. I think, and I was pontificating on this the other day after I got done with a range session with quite a few slugs, and then I shot an AR, how much more fun the AR is to shoot. And that has to lead me to believe that is at least a big part, if not the biggest part, of the reason why ARs are so popular. They are just so much fun to shoot. They have very little recoil. The round is super inexpensive, at least as far as centerfire rifle rounds go. It's much, much cheaper than most other rifle rounds. Compare, 223 versus 30-06. It's quite a bit more affordable, which makes it fun to shoot. Also, the guns themselves have very little recoil. They have very good ergonomics. And they are just so much fun. Any of the M forgeries, the M4 clones, whether it's an actual Colt 6920, which I'd argue is not super cost efficient for a fun gun, but any of the Rugers, my top pick would be the Smith & Wesson M&P, M forgeries, any of those M4 type clones, even with just an iron sight and a peep sight, which I would argue is where you should start with your riflemanship, becoming a rifleman, they're just so much fun to shoot that the M4 platform just has to be on the list. If you want to take that fun to a new level, I really like the AR type pistols. Hopefully they stay legal because they are quite effective for a lot of things and they are a lot of fun to shoot. My wife actually calls mine the spanking rifle because she gets to spank the side of it when she loads it, which she likes a lot. But not only that, but the AR pistols are light and handy, which means they fit in a backpack well. They're not heavy to carry around. They're not heavy for new shooters to wield around. And they don't have a lot of recoil. And as long as you put in sufficient ear protection, because they are quite loud, they have to make the list of fun guns to shoot. If the lever action rifle is the fun gun from days of yore, then the AR platform has to be the Neo Cowboy Americana rifle of today, and especially a super fun plinking gun. And it just makes it more fun that it's a rifle that my wife gets to spank. So what's not to love about that? And I think that's going to be it for what was on my list, at least going from memory. And I did throw it out to the Patreons today in our Patreon chat. I'd be a bad capitalist if I didn't mention. If you want to be part of that, go to goodshepherdtraining.com and consider becoming a patron. We talk about stuff like this all the time with like-minded individuals that don't think it's weird to talk about guns for a big chunk of the day. Anyway, one of their picks was the M1 Garand. Now, it didn't make my list because of my criteria. The rifles themselves and the ammo are not cheap, but I cannot argue that they are super fun to shoot. So the M1 Garand, and talk about Americana, I mean, that's pretty American. So the M1 Garand is certainly fun to shoot, if not cheap to shoot. And the Patreon pointed out that on the last round, they throw out the clip, and that's kind of cool in and of itself. The other one that was mentioned was a shotgun. And again, I did mention the 410. I didn't mention the 12 and 20 gauge because for me, there are a lot of recoil, and that turns off a lot of new shooters. But it certainly can be fun, as a Patreon pointed out, to just buy a box of sporting clays and a hand thrower and just go out and throw clays and have fun shooting them. That is a great day at the range. So those are going to be the Patreon picks. And I think that's going to conclude this episode of just some of the most fun guns. Let's not forget, as useful as guns are and as important as they are to protect yourself and provide and put food on the table for you and your family and protect you and your family and those weaker in society, as important as that role is, let's not forget that guns can just be a lot of fun to go out and shoot. With that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I will try and remember when I get back to a computer to add a tactical tip of the day and a tactical verse of the day. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully the audio quality is not so bad that you can't understand it or listen to it or enjoy it. If it is, let me know, and I'll just wait next time until I get to a computer. But just thanks for listening. I am very humbled and blessed that anybody listens to these podcasts. Have a blessed day.